Last year, I performed spoken word poetry to an auditorium of boys and girls aged about 6 to 12. After the performance, they asked questions. One in particular stood out. A boy asked, "Were your friends jealous of your success?" So I asked them, "Who here is friends with someone who is jealous of your success?" And almost all the hands in the auditorium were raised, including, by the way, some of the teachers. I couldn't believe it. I cried, "Break it off! A person who doesn't wish you well is not a friend." And look, toxic and abusive individuals can be very charming and oftentimes even helpful, but you really don't need them in your life. Cut them out if you can. Set boundaries. So cut them out if you can, set boundaries and minimize contact with them as much as possible if you can't. On the other hand, who you choose to be friends with is a totally different matter. Now, Aristotle defined 3 types of friendships, but he said that bad people can only be friends of utility and of pleasure. Friends of utility are those who use you for their gains, and friends of pleasure enjoy your company, but they would drop you or disappear when you encounter obstacles. Aristotle then indicates that only good people can be friends of virtue or of goodness. And I consider that a soulmate relationship, which I define as a friendship that draws its energy from a place beyond filling each other's emptiness. It's where 2 people are able to hear and obey the whispers of their souls or their conscience instead of their needs for instant gratification or material gains. And I truly believe that a soulmate relationship can never be assessed by what it can offer in the present, because the whole point is 2 people coming together to prepare the framework that will push the present into the future. See, a soulmate relationship changes the present on 2 levels, individual and communal. And I mean specifically that if the friends continue to go against their selfish drives, then the relationship will change both parties. And if they let go of unhealthy social expectations, they'll end up changing their surroundings. And honestly, I didn't know what a friendship was like until I met my current best friend. You may know her. She's famous too. You really don't know her? Okay, Google Delalid. Okay. Because a friend of virtue is hard to find and even much harder to keep, today I'll share with you 3 lessons from our experience in the hopes that it'll help you recognize and hold on to your own soulmates when you see them. So, lesson number 1. Flaws are natural, abuse is not. Now, let me start off by saying that just because someone is kind, funny, hardworking, and overall amazing, it doesn't mean that they respect your time. Huh? Mrs. Just give me 5 minutes to get ready. And 3 hours later, I'm still playing with her cats while she's gluing on her eyelashes. Now, guys, I consider myself a very patient and sensitive poet. Like, oh my God, I am just so humble and polite, right? Not even close. But here's the thing. Even when I don't get mad and start yelling, "Yalla, Dalal, I'm so bored," she'd still turn around with one eyelash glued to her face and say, "You didn't have to yell. Your eyes did all the screaming." Now, the reason I'm sharing this exchange, even though it doesn't paint the best version of ourselves, is because we must never pretend that we or the friends that we are entering into a relationship with are ever going to be flawless. We're human beings at the end of the day. Flaws are not just integral to our lives in general, but in fact, they tend to be highlighted or emphasized when dealing with others, especially the people we interact with more often and with whom our encounters are intimate or intense. But there is a difference between dealing with someone who is flawed and someone who is abusive. So, the first lesson has 3 additional points to help you differentiate between normal but annoying human flaws and toxic or abusive traits. So 1, Make sure that your flaws are not directed at each other. Confession. I really do have a temper. I know, you're all shocked. What? Nada? But you're just so lovely, we can't see it. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. You see, the universe works in mysterious ways. But listen, just because I have a flaw, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna use my friend as an outlet for that flaw. My friend is not a punching bag for my anger. My temper is there for me to deal with, to control, to transform into a virtue. It is not there for me to indulge in or to attach to my identity, right? We all have people who hurt us and then say, because you are my friend, you need to love me as I am. Yeah, nopes. There's an alternative to that kind of friendship. So, if you ever encounter anyone who justifies unloading their ugliness on you, using your friendship together as an excuse, break it off with them. That's toxic. 2, make sure you befriend an authentic person. And I'm referring to someone who says what they mean and does what they say. Not someone who paints a rosy picture of him or herself. Because an authentic person is more likely to acknowledge when they make mistakes, but a hypocrite, or someone who's so in love with an image of themselves, will never recognize their flaws, and thus they will never change. Instead of apologizing when they hurt you, they'll just say, oh, but I love you so much. Why would I hurt you? An authentic person, on the other hand, might disagree with you when you bring up the subject for the first time. But there's enough transparency about what they can and cannot do, and a willingness to find a solution, and these are elements you can work with. Remember also that authentic people know who they are. They do not seek external validation to constantly reaffirm an invented version of themselves. You will have a much bigger chance of maintaining a sustained relationship with them over time than with someone who keeps your friendship at the mercy of other people's opinions. And the third aspect to help you differentiate between natural flaws and toxicity is making sure you find someone for whom change is a natural part of life. And I mean specifically someone who proves through consistent actions that they are willing to apologize, grow, make amends, let go of unhealthy worldviews or harmful baggage, forgive unconditionally, not calculate their concessions, set boundaries that protect both parties instead of boundaries that punish one or the other, and who expects all of that from you as well. Flaws are natural. We all make mistakes. We can't enter into a friendship with a human being expecting them not to hurt us, or to disappoint us, or to lie to us, or to be, in some way, shape, or form, the cause of our agony. But we can and should expect to enter into friendships where these flaws are transformed, and we should be willing to look at our own defects in the same way. So to recap, flaws in a friendship are natural when both parties do not direct their flaws at one another, when they remain authentic and work out their kinks and disagreements over time, and when they embrace proactive changes in a relationship. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Nada, that's all fine and dandy, but how do you make sure that anyone is willing to stick around through the early stage of a friendship when there are no facts to fall back on? Because you don't really know the other person. You develop that knowledge over time, right? Telepathy. And the answer to you is lesson number 2. Initially, the glue, the ring, the container where your flaws can bubble and collide together is a bigger picture or a bigger cause. Now, when I met Dalal, she had an office job she didn't like. She frequented female gatherings and dreamed about all the things everybody else in her environment dreamed about. But I felt like she was giving up her potential just to give in, just to fit in and be like everybody else, instead of figuring out how and why she was created into a unique human being. And I remember asking her, if you could be or do anything you want, and there was nothing that blocked your path, what would that be? But I also told her to hold the thought. Because if your experiences, your words and actions up until that point were limited, they will hold back your thoughts and dreams as well. Remember, you cannot think limitless thoughts if you've only been acting in a limited way. It took Dalal literally about a year and a half of doing things outside of her comfort zone before she finally heard the whisper of her soul and was able to answer that question. She took classes in photography, fiction writing, philosophy, film and TV production, and playing a musical instrument. Now, true story. Dalal wanted to be a guitarist. But one day, I walked in on her lesson and found her singing while her teacher jammed on her guitar. I was like, okay, no more guitar lessons for you, young lady. Vocals? Maybe. Oh, and here's another fun fact that you won't read in any of her interviews. Dalal wrote a science fiction story that I sent to one of my colleagues, a Kuwaiti science fiction writer, who liked it enough that he sent it to the godfather of Arabic science fiction, Nabil Farouk, author of Malaf al-Mustaqbal and Rajul al-Mustahil. They wanted to publish a collection for her, so they asked for 10 more. And that's when she cracked and confessed that she actually hated the writing process and didn't want to put herself through that torture 10 more times. Now pay attention to this part, because Dalal and I knew from the very beginning that failing and succeeding in the social sense was not what we were after. Okay? What we were after was what Dalal's soul really wanted her to do. So not external validation, but rather internal recognition of what felt right for her. And you get to that point by first shedding all other people's expectations of you that you have been accumulating over the years, like Dalal's dream of being seen as a writer or as a guitarist, for example. And so, after about a year and a half, she finally heard it, the whisper of her soul, the desire to become Dalalid, Kuwait's iconic fashion and makeup blogger, the Middle East ambassador of beauty. And I decided I was going to help her make that happen. So now my bigger picture changed from helping my best friend shed social expectations and fears so she can recognize the true purpose in her life to the following. Changing Western representations of Arab women in the media from angry mothers of terrorists shouting at journalists to beautiful, classy, and funny girls next door who love to say 5 minutes, but really they mean 3 hours. Another angle to my bigger picture was creating a new industry that would operate between the private and public sector in Kuwait and then branch out into the Middle East later. And finally, using social media and the fashion industry as a stepping stone to monetize that creative industry. Now, in spite of our lofty bigger picture, I have to be honest with you. When Dalal and I first started working on the brand, we were both a bit selfish. On a personal level, I was using that brand to get back at an old friend who was spreading rumors about me. And Dalal wanted an easy miracle because at the time I managed everything for her. I took pictures, negotiated contracts, translated interviews, designed her websites, etc. Nowadays though, Dalal and I look back at that period and laugh because I no longer feel any ill will towards that old friend. And Dalal is a beautiful, independent, big boss with employees and agents and clients all over the world. We really needed that bigger picture, that bigger cause, to help us iron out our flaws. In my case, my desire for revenge, and in Dalal's case, her entitlement to fame. Now, the third lesson is the most important one. You will need to choose your friend over and over and over again. And you will have to do it when you really don't want to. When Dalal and I have gone through major challenges over the course of our friendship. These challenges never evolved into abuse, but they were still pretty intense. And every single time we were faced with the most negative aspects of our inner selves, we chose to remain friends with one another. Every single time. And we didn't do it after taking a break or after we forgot the pain, because we knew that space in that moment would lessen the bond afterward. Whereas to strengthen the bond, you will need to chop off bits of your ego when your ego is most powerful. And I can't tell you how difficult it is to tell someone who is the cause of your pain in the midst of that anguish, right when you can't feel anything else but you're hurt. I am so mad at you right now, but I think if we get through this, we will have a bond unlike any other. And I want to get through this with you because you are worth the effort. And you know what? Any friend who inspires you to grow and to become a better person is really worth the effort. So, guys, may you all merit friends of virtue in your lifetimes, and may your friendships positively impact the world in more ways than you can even imagine. Thank you.